So today we're going to have a pretty in-depth interview with Brad from Full Spectrum Survival. We're going to find out what has shaped him into the man that he is today. We're also going to find out what he did before he had his channels. So let's just jump right into it. So Brad, before we jump into the questions themselves, I really want to give you kudos on both of your channels. For anybody that's watching this interview that doesn't know, Brad actually has two channels. The first one is Full Spectrum Survival, and then the second one is Off Grid with Brad and Kelley. Both channels are great for anybody that's interested in preparedness or being more self-reliant. So Brad, let's go ahead and start with question number one. As I've said in some of my other previous interview videos, the thing that got me started to think about prepping was the whole Y2K thing, and the thing that actually made me start acting on prepping was because of getting dispatched on a full-on riot over tennis shoes. So why don't you share with us, why did you get into preparedness? Was there an event that happened in your life, or did you just kind of suddenly wake up one day and just realize that you should be more into preparedness and more into self-sufficiency?
So of course, growing up in Florida, where hurricanes come almost every season, and there is a true threat of a regional disaster, something that can knock the power out for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, something that the onset of the disaster itself, the crisis event, can lead to an increase in deaths or social unrest, things like that. Most Floridians, at least full-time Floridians, are used to having a low-level mindset of preparedness. You know, you always have your batteries, you always have your flashlight, you have plenty of water, you have food that doesn't need cooking or a way to cook without the grid. So I grew up in that mindset, and that, I guess, was just passed down from lineage of people living in Florida. In my youth, I also had a book that I remember very vividly on camping. It was an older gentleman. I can't quite remember the name of the book now, but I pored over this book over and over and over again. I'm talking real young, 5, 6, 7 years old, and would always be fascinated by the minimalistic approach, how little it took to actually thrive while camping versus the sort of chaotic, overindulging society that we live in. And I drew an early parallel and was more fascinated with the things I could carry on my backpack and just getting out there and doing things than I was the lavish enjoyments of our modern first world.
So why don't you share a little bit more about yourself with us? What has shaped you into the person that you are today? And what did you do when you were younger and before you had your channels?
So my youth definitely shaped me into who I am today. I was always interested in camping, always interested in overnights. I remember very young, maybe 7 or 8 years old, I had a friend who he lived not close to me, not in my neighborhood, but a fair distance away, and we would walk together. And he was convinced, and we would have these discussions over and over again, he was convinced that he could survive the rest of his life on fruit roll-ups. And he explained to me all of the different nutritional values of them, that they had pretty much everything that he needs for survival in them. And we would have, at our age brackets, very in-depth discussions about the food groups and the needs of sustenance for a world without the modern conveniences of the supermarket. And so we would map out different areas in our local region that had fruit trees. We would find the neighbors that had fruit trees, and we had lots of neighbors that came and said, you can take as many as you want, just don't leave a mess. And so we were, growing up in Florida, there's orange, citrus, there's tangerine, grapefruit everywhere. And so we had all of our fruit trees mapped out. We had our local sources of water mapped out, and we just had this mindset of always thinking of a time when you didn't have access to the supermarket or your parents getting stuff for you. I remember another thing that I would do is I would always carry with me, of course, in my youth, my parents didn't give me a preparedness budget or a survival budget or anything like that. But during Christmas time, my parents celebrated Christmas, we had plenty of little lights, the little 2-prong lights, and we had 9-volt batteries. And so I would always carry with me in my packs just one of the lights and a 9-volt battery. And I'm sure you guys have done those experiments before where those things will really last forever on a 9-volt. And so that was something that was always in my EDC, always had a knife, always had a little light and a 9-volt battery so that I wouldn't be without some source of light should night fall. And then finally, when I had a child, I knew that I had to up my game. And me and my wife, we had our children, at least our first child, very young. She was only 19, I was just a couple of years older, and we decided we were either going to be good parents to the best of our ability, or we were going to be average parents in our age bracket. And so we decided to be good parents, always were home with the kids. The last movie that we saw, I mean, we maybe saw a handful of movies since our child was born. To this day, the last movie my wife and I saw in the theater was Avatar. And that was 2009, because it's just more important for us to be at home with the family than it is to get out and do those sort of modern things that that society tells you need to do. They say you need to work 80 hours a week so that you can afford to go to dinner out at a restaurant, and so you can afford to go to the movies.
So I have never been one of those preppers that has fixated on one type of disaster that could happen. I've always tried to have my preps to be as broad as possible to cover as many different types of disasters as possible with what my budget allows. So why don't you share with the rest of us, what are your biggest concerns that could bring on SHTF? Now, I know none of us knows what will cause SHTF and that we can only develop theories on it, but what I would like for you to share with us is, what is your major concerns?
Just like you said, I don't prepare for any one event. I'm not concerned about any one event. I have a very broad view of the world and know that danger exists literally at every corner. That doesn't mean danger is going to get you or it's going to ever affect you and your family. It's just danger exists there. Bad people exist, violence exists, natural disasters exist, biological threats exist, and to the best of my ability, I want to be prepared for any one of those events to take place. So you kind of asked, what do I think are the leading threats that will affect us, especially in the first world or in the Western world? For me, it is definitely an economic collapse. Every society fails by its economy. It has happened over and over again throughout history. Every empire falls. We are far past the time that is due for the American empire to fall, and we're starting to see the cracks in the glass now. We're starting to see the water seep through those cracks. You've got America's allies turning towards China, turning towards Russia, turning towards Iran. You've got a weakening of the global economy. You've got the band-aids that were put into place for the 2008 financial disaster. They're starting to unravel. When this happens, the United States dollar, the USD, which is a global staple, will no longer be the economic powerhouse that it has been. When that time comes, when the economy unravels, every country throughout history, and just because we're more intelligent and just because we're more enlightened individuals in our world doesn't matter. Every country throughout history goes to war when their economy fails. So a very real threat to me is first the economic collapse. No one really has timelines because the band-aids they put onto place for the 2008 crisis have lasted a lot longer than they should have. When the economic collapse continues and it affects you and me, then we have a real threat of social disaster. We have a real threat to the just-in-time food delivery system. We have a real threat because we have been bred away from growing our own food. We have been put into a corner of paranoia in the broad viewpoint of the world because you have an extra month's worth of food. And so people step away from it and they say, I don't want to do anything with this. I don't want to be involved in that type of personality. So now you have a whole bunch of eaters, a whole bunch of people who will be hungry and who will do whatever it takes to feed their family. At the end of the day, we are all selfish individuals, and we, when put in front of a disaster, when put in front of a crisis, we will make a decision that is in the best outcome of ourselves and our family. We're humans. We are just another animal. And I think you know that well, EP. I think that you have seen that well. And so, social unrest by way of economic collapse, the threat of global war, and another thing that we're long overdue for is a pandemic, a biological threat. You've got Ebola, which is a major threat right now. Don't let anybody tell you differently. You've got the avian influenza virus, the Nipah virus, the MERS coronavirus. Any one of these, the world is not prepared for on a pandemic level. So I do what I can to prepare broadly, because at the end of the day, no matter what happens, no matter what is thrown against you, you need to eat and you need to protect yourself. And I try to tell everybody, just remember the rule of threes. I've expanded upon it a little bit because you have 3 moments in time, 3 seconds to react when faced with increasing violence. You have 3 minutes without air to survive. 3 hours in inclement weather. I'm not talking getting rained on, I mean very inclement, extreme weather. 3 days without water, and by the time that 3rd day comes, you will be so dehydrated. You will be so far beyond your capability to fight, to get to the next watering hole. But you only have 3 days. That's if someone's carrying you. And 3 weeks without food. Some people might only have 3 days without medicine. So we have these rules of threes that we have to adhere to, and so I focus on those. And I hope that anyone watching will do the same.
Now, could you share with the rest of us something that would surprise people to find out about you? Something that we wouldn't find out about you from watching either one of your channels?
I think people would be surprised to find out that I am a diamond graduate with the Gemological Institute of America. My wife and I, together with family, we ran a very small jewelry shop, grading diamonds, buying and selling jewelry, things like that. In today's economy, it's not profitable. We did not make money off of it, but it's something that I went to school for, learned how to do. My grandfather was a diamond cutter, and it just kind of followed through. I have a great appreciation for the earth around us and the stones that we can find that took a very long time to form, and seeing that beauty. And I think it's important to remember that beauty. I am also, together with my wife, we are photographers in the glamour, nature, and product photography genres. That's usually something that people who look at our channels go, wow, I didn't know you were interested in that. I didn't know that that was a business for you, but that is a main staple of our business.
So several years ago, I had unknown persons take some wild pot shots at me while I was on a traffic stop. They just fired 3 or 4 shots in my direction. Obviously, none of them hit me because I'm still here. So why don't you share with us what's probably, you think, the most dangerous situation that you've ever been in?
Definitely the most dangerous situations that I've been in come from an upbringing in a very populated area in Florida. Near the Tampa Bay area, there were lots of gangs growing up. Gang activity was very high. I had people approaching me from multiple gangs trying to threaten and coerce me to be a part of that. And when you choose no on either side, you're kind of stuck in the middle because you're not playing for any of the bad guys. Been attacked with knives and clubs. Also, a couple of things that I think you can at least respect are better left unsaid. A couple of situations that were very dangerous that shouldn't be spoken. Thank you very much, Ethical Preparedness, for having me here. I've really enjoyed the sort of thinking back about my childhood and what kind of shaped me into that. I don't know that I've ever told anybody about my little Christmas lights and 9-volt battery, and very few people, maybe my wife and a couple of others, I have talked about my friend in youth who tried to convince me over and over again that we could survive for the rest of our life off of fruit roll-ups. Thank you so much for having me here. If anyone's interested, please come check out our channels. Full Spectrum Survival, we do the news in 2 minutes, 5 days a week, where I wrote a computer algorithm in the Python programming language that goes out, sifts through multinational news outlets, sifts through social media outlets, and gathers together impending crisis events that I think affect our community. I report on that every day. We also do survival and preparedness, and then on Off Grid with Brad and Kelley, we discuss our journey as a family to be minimalist and to go off the grid officially. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you always stay safe and keep watch.
And links to both of his channels should be appearing in the upper right hand corner of the screen just about now. And like I've said in some of the other interview videos, you're going to be seeing several more interview videos like this coming up in the future. Anyways folks, hey, if you made it this far, thank you very much for watching, and I pray that you have a good night.